I'm an identical twin living in Queensland, Australia since 1984 while my twin brother was still in Wellington, New Zealand, until he moved to Australia too. For my parents' 50th wedding anniversary in 1992, I called them in New Zealand and said, "I'm really sorry, I can't make it. Work's just too busy." So I sent some flowers instead. Then I secretly flew to New Zealand, stayed with my twin brother, and showed up at their anniversary party with my sister-in-law in tow. My parents didn't recognize me for about 30 minutes until I couldn't help giggling. That's when my dad started giving me the look. Something was off. Then my twin brother walked in and casually said, "G'day." That's when the fun really began. We can still fool people even after 40 years. Mrs. McDougall, an elderly Irish woman, had rarely visited the doctor. After some brief conversation and background questions, the doctor told her to come back the next morning at 10 o'clock with a specimen. The following morning, Mrs. McDougall arrived looking like she'd been dragged behind a tractor. The doctor was shocked and asked what had happened. "Well, Doc," she began, "you told me to bring in a specimen. I didn't quite understand what that meant, but I was too embarrassed to ask. So, on my way home, I bumped into Mrs. McTavish. I said, 'McTavish, the doctor told me to bring in a specimen. What does that mean?' She replied, 'Go piss in a bottle.' I said, 'Go shit in your hat.' And that's when the fight started." An elderly woman visits the doctor and says, "Doctor, I have a problem. I'm constantly farting. They don't make any noise and they don't smell, but I'm farting all the time. In fact, I've been farting the entire time I've been sitting here in your office, and you didn't even notice." The doctor examines her quickly, prescribes some pills, and tells her to come back in a month for a follow-up. At her next appointment, the woman says, "Doctor, what was in that medicine you gave me? It didn't stop the farting at all. In fact, it's worse. Now they're silent, but they smell terrible. You have to help me." The doctor smiles and says, "Excellent. Now that we've fixed your sense of smell, we'll work on your hearing." 3 men are stranded on an island, close to starving, when a native tribe finds them and takes them back to their village. The leader says, "Go into the jungle and bring back a fruit. If you succeed, we'll let you live." The first man returns with a peach. The leader says, "Now take this peach and shove it up your ass. If you laugh, we will kill you." The man attempts it, but can't hold back his laughter, and they behead him. The second man returns with a grape. The leader gives him the same instructions. He manages to stay composed, but bursts out laughing halfway through. They behead him as well. In heaven, the two men meet. The first one says, "I laughed because the peach's fuzz was tickling my bum. Why did you laugh?" The second man replies, "I was fine until I saw the third guy coming back with a pineapple." Mabel and Edith had been best friends their whole lives, through childhood, adolescence, courtship, marriage, motherhood, widowhood, and everything in between. They had made a pact that whichever one passed away first would try to contact the other. Eventually, Mabel passed away. A couple of weeks later, Edith is getting into bed one night when she hears, "Edith! Edith!" She sits up, startled. "Mabel, is that you?" "Yes," comes the reply. "Oh my gosh, Mabel! It's so good to hear from you. Tell me, what's it like where you are?" "Oh dear, it's exhausting," Mabel says. "I wake up in the morning, have sex, eat breakfast, have sex, take a nap, have sex, eat lunch, have sex, take another nap, have sex, eat dinner, have more sex, and finally I get to go to sleep. Good heavens, Mabel, I had no idea there was so much fornicating in heaven." Mabel responds, "Who said anything about heaven? I'm a jackrabbit in Arizona." John visits his 90-year-old grandpa who lives way out in the country. On the first morning of his visit, Grandpa prepares a breakfast of bacon and eggs. John notices a strange, film-like substance on his plate and asks, "Grandpa, are these plates clean?" Grandpa replies, "They're as clean as cold water can get them. Just go ahead and eat." For lunch, Grandpa makes hamburgers. Again, John notices his plate has some specks of dried egg on it and asks, "Are you sure these plates are clean?" Without looking up, Grandpa repeats, "I told you, those plates are as clean as cold water can get them." Later, as John is about to leave, Grandpa's dog starts growling and blocks his way. John says, "Grandpa, your dog won't let me pass." Grandpa yells, "Cold water, go lie down." Ray Mears, Steve Irwin, Chuck Norris, and Bear Grylls are auditioning for a reality survival TV series. The producers ask them, "What would you do if you woke up in the middle of the night and found an inland taipan snake in your tent?" Ray Mears replies, "I'd carefully unzip the tent, slowly walk backward, and exit quietly, being sure not to alarm or disturb the snake." Steve Irwin says, "Crikey, what a beautiful snake! Look at those colors!" "Right, mate, let's just leave it be and get some sleep." Chuck Norris responds, "The snake would look at me, apologize for disturbing my sleep, and then slither out of the tent." Finally, Bear Grylls answers, "I'd call the front desk of the Four Seasons and ask why there's a tent in the middle of my presidential suite. Then I'd ask them to send someone up to remove it and make sure they bring a bottle of Dom Perignon when they come." A man stumbles into a quiet bar, barely making it onto a bar stool. He calls the bartender over and slurs for a drink. The bartender warily pours him a whiskey, and the man, now somewhat focused, spots a large fish tank at the back of the bar filled with banknotes. "Whoa, what's all that money in there for?" he asks, his voice slurring. The bartender sizes him up, sees an opportunity for a laugh, and says, "Oh, that cash? It's a prize you can win, if you've got what it takes." The drunk man perks up, eyes widening. "Yeah? What do I have to do?" The bartender points to a large, tough-looking guy at the end of the bar, next to the stairs. "See that big guy over there? He's the head bouncer. You've got to knock him out. Cold." The drunk guy blinks, clearly processing. "Is that all?" The bartender shakes his head. No. After that, you need to head up those stairs to the first door. Inside, there's a vicious guard dog. He'll attack anyone who enters, so you'll have to deal with him." The drunk man nods, listening intently. "Once you've handled the dog," the bartender continues, "you go to the second door. Inside is a beautiful woman. She's been with so many men, but no one has ever satisfied her. You have to give her pleasure like she's never experienced before." The bartender leans in, grinning. "Do all that, and the money's yours." The drunk man looks down at his glass, seemingly uncertain now. The bartender smirks and turns away, cleaning the back of the bar. Suddenly, there's a loud smack and a heavy thud. The bartender turns around just in time to see the bouncer flat on the floor. The drunk man is already storming up the stairs, eyes fixed with determination. Before the bartender can react, the man bursts through the first door. A cacophony of growls, yelps, and blood-curdling noises erupts from the balcony. It's impossible to tell whether the noises are coming from the dog or the man. A minute of tense silence passes. The bartender looks nervously up at the balcony. Finally, the door swings open and the drunk man staggers through, zipping up his trousers. "Right!" he shouts, eyes scanning the room. "Where's this guard dog?" Just after New Year's, 50-year-old Bob visits his doctor for his annual physical. He confides that he's fed up with his wife and wonders if the doctor knows of any drugs that could help him get rid of her without it looking suspicious. The doctor, not wanting to be involved in anything illegal, responds, "Bob, don't do that. All you need to do is screw her twice a day and take her dancing at every nightclub in town. She'll be dead in a year." Bob, a bit confused, asks, "Really?" The doctor nods and says, "I guarantee it." Bob leaves and the doctor breathes a sigh of relief, glad the situation was resolved. A year later, around Thanksgiving, the doctor walks into a restaurant with a dance floor. He spots Bob sitting in a chair, but Bob's hair is snow white. He's using a walker and looks like he's 90 years old. The doctor looks out onto the dance floor and sees Bob's wife dressed in a miniskirt leading a conga line and twirling like a ballerina. In amazement, the doctor says, "My God, your wife looks fantastic." Bob responds with a grin. "She sure does, and she's only got a month to live." A Welshman is stranded on a desert island, and after realizing he's going to be there for a while, he gets to work building things that will remind him of home. After 20 years, he's rescued, and before he leaves, he shows the captain of the ship the results of all his hard work. He proudly shows the captain the little terraced house he built, just like the one he grew up in. Then he points out the working men's club he constructed, a reminder of all the nights he spent with his friends. Next, he shows him the chapel he built, just like the one he went to every Sunday with his family back home in the valleys. As they're about to leave, the captain notices another chapel, just as carefully built and decorated as the others, which the Welshman hasn't mentioned. Naturally, the captain asks, "What about this one?" The Welshman replies, "Oh, that's the one I don't go to." A salesman, whilst traveling from client to client, is driving down a country road and sees a sign saying "Talking dog for sale, $10." In disbelief at what he'd just read, he pulled into the driveway of what was a small farm. In the porchway was a typical rocking chair with an older guy sat in it, cleaning his shoes. He was a typical-looking farmer-type guy, and he greeted the salesman as he approached from his car. "Howdy," he stated. Hi," the salesman inquired. "I'm here about the talking dog you have for sale." "Yeah, sure. Go round the back. He's in the yard," the old guy directed the salesman. "He'll tell you all you want to know." "Gee, okay, thanks," the salesman replied, quite startled and enthused at the prospect of actually not just talking to a dog, but possibly purchasing one for $10. As the salesman walked into the backyard, he was aware of a sun lounger with a golden retriever lying on it, happily panting in the sun. Hi?" the salesman inquired. "You the talking dog?" The retriever looked around at the salesman and replied in the most perfect English, "Ah, yes, that is me. My name is James." "Wow," the amazed salesman continued. "I've never heard of a dog that can talk before. To meet you, James. My name is Frank. I saw the sign and had to come and see. How is this possible? What's your story?" "Well," James the Labrador said, sighing as he chose his words, "my time here is nearing its end. I need to move to pastures new and embrace a new life. It seems my ability and knowledge far outweigh this family. I have an enviable history that would probably astound you if I were to tell you." "Oh, please," the salesman expectantly anticipated. "Please tell me more." "Okay," James the Labrador elaborated. "When I was younger, I was a government-trained agent. Because of my ability to be able to convey conversations unknowingly, I was assigned to various dignitaries as a household pet. I was privy to some pretty highbrow meetings with world leaders and criminal gangs around the world. Some of the information I attained has saved millions of lives. After this, utilizing my trained ability to sniff out bomb residue, I became a bomb disposal expert. I disarmed bombs all over the world by explaining the wiring via intercom to my team, and I cut through the necessary wires with my sharp dog teeth. I was awarded the Purple Heart for my bravery, and this was presented to me at a hush-hush ceremony at the White House. All the leaders of the free world attended in honor of me. After all this, I came here. I needed to lie low for a while. I'm currently under government protection because the knowledge I have is too valuable." "Wow," the salesman stated in disbelief, jaw agape at the story James the talking Labrador just conveyed to him. "I'm buying you." With that, the salesman ran back to the old guy on the porch with $10 in his hand. This was too good a bargain to miss. "Excuse me, sir?" Frank the salesman asked the farmer. "I'd like to buy your talking dog for $10. In saying this, he puts the $10 note in the farmer's hand to seal the deal. "Cool," the farmer replies happily. "He's all yours." "But I don't understand," the salesman asks. "This dog has done all sorts. He's literally responsible for peace in our time and our existence. Why is he so cheap?" The farmer replies, "'Cause he's a F*** king liar. He's not done any of that stuff he just said to you. We're sick of his bullshit." It was the final night of the circus season, and after the show, two dwarf clowns decided to head into town for a couple of drinks. They eventually met a pair of ladies out for the night, and after a few more rounds, they all went back to one of the ladies' flats. The four of them split off into two couples and headed to separate bedrooms. In the first bedroom, one of the dwarfs was having a familiar problem that many men face after drinking too much. The lady was growing more frustrated and impatient as the minutes passed. Meanwhile, from the other bedroom, they could hear a repeated sound. "Okay, I'm coming. 1, 2, 3. Ooh," which was repeated every few minutes for an hour. Then both bedrooms fell into complete silence for the rest of the night. The next morning, as the two dwarfs were walking back to the circus, the first one turned to the other and sighed. "You know, last night, I just couldn't." Well, you know, get it ready for action. It was so embarrassing. The second dwarf looked at him and replied, "You think you had a problem? I couldn't even climb onto the bed." Many years ago, postmen in the UK wore dark blue uniforms and caps. There was an elderly man in the neighborhood who owned a Jack Russell Terrier that took great pleasure in terrorizing the local postman. To avoid trouble, the man would keep the dog indoors whenever the postman was due. One day, however, the dog managed to slip out while the door was open as the postman entered the front garden. The dog immediately charged at him, and the postman had to fend it off using his cap. Eventually, the owner caught the dog and brought it back inside, but the damage was done. The postman's hat was in tatters. Furious, the postman confronted the dog's owner. "Look at what your blasted dog did!" he exclaimed. The owner shrugged. "So what? It's what Jack Russell Terriers do. And besides, that cap is company property. Just get another one." The postman shot back, "I don't like your attitude." The owner smirked. "It's not my hat," he chewed. "It's yours." One day, a young woman walked into a dentist's clinic. Without a word, she sat down in the chair, unbuttoned her shirt, and removed her bra right in front of the shocked dentist. The dentist's jaw dropped as he quickly turned away and stammered, "Miss, what on earth are you doing? I'm a dentist. I only deal with teeth." The woman, completely calm, replied, "Oh, I know that. I'm here because there's a tooth stuck in my nipple and I need it removed." A traveling salesman on a new route out west in the U.S. walks into a saloon to grab a bite to eat and a drink. As he swings open the double doors, he notices a horse tied to a post with a sign reading, "Make me laugh and win the dough." Next to the horse is an old cauldron filled with various bills. Intrigued, the salesman moseys up to the bar, orders a drink, and asks the bartender about the sign. The bartender tells him, "Well, partner, just drop $5 into the cauldron and take your best shot." The salesman walks over, drops his money into the cauldron, then reaches up to pull the horse's head down to his own and whispers something in the horse's ear. Immediately, the horse bursts out laughing. The salesman returns to the bar, demands his cash prize, and leaves the saloon going about his business. A few months later, the same salesman walks back into the same saloon, sees the same bartender, and notices that the sign now says, "Make me cry and win the dough." The cauldron now holds larger denominations of cash. He orders food and drink and asks the bartender about the new rules. The bartender tells him, "It's $10 this time and the horse has to cry instead of laugh." After a moment of thought, the salesman says, "I'll give it a try, but I need to take the horse outside for just a moment." The bartender hesitates but agrees, and the salesman promises not to harm the horse, adding an extra $20 to the pot. The bartender agrees, so the salesman untethers the horse and leads it out the door. Moments later, the salesman re-enters, leading a visibly distressed horse with tears streaming down its face and snot dripping from its nose. The bartender inspects the horse, finding no injuries or damage. The salesman asks for his winnings, and the bartender agrees, but asks him how he managed to accomplish these two incredible feats with the horse. The salesman sits down and begins to explain. Salesman: "Remember the time I made the horse laugh?" Barman: "Sure, I remember." Salesman: "I whispered something in his ear." Barman: "Yeah, what did you say?" Salesman: "I whispered to the horse that my thing was bigger than his." Barman: "That's funny. Even I'll admit that." Salesman: "Now, for the crying part, remember when I took the horse outside?" Barman: "Yeah, what happened?" Salesman: "I showed it to him." It was the mailman's last day on the job, and as he went around his route for the final time, all the people on his route were giving him gifts, booze, food, money, and so on, to say thanks and goodbye. When he knocked on the door of the last house on his route, it was opened by a beautiful young woman wearing a sheer negligee. "Whoa!" he exclaimed as she greeted him, and she smiled, saying, "Would you like to come in and have some breakfast?" He couldn't say yes fast enough, and in no time she was preparing a massive breakfast: bacon, eggs, toast, orange juice, bagels, coffee, the whole works. When he finished and was wiping his mouth with a napkin, she asked, "How about we go upstairs and fool around?" The mailman eagerly nodded. "Oh, yeah," he replied, and she took his hand, leading him upstairs. They spent an hour or so in bed. Afterward, as they lay back against the pillows, smoking cigarettes, she got up, walked to the dresser, grabbed a dollar bill, and handed it to him. The mailman was stunned. "This is the most amazing day of my life," he said, looking at the dollar. "How did something like this happen?" She shrugged casually and said, "Oh, it was my husband's idea." The mailman, now confused, asked, "Your husband? What does he have to do with this?" She smiled and replied, "Last week I said to him, the mailman is retiring soon. What should we do for him? And he said, screw him, give him a buck. But the breakfast was my idea." In a small village, a couple was famous for their remarkable health and longevity. The husband was 102 years old and his wife was 98, yet they both worked tirelessly on their farm and looked decades younger. One day, a curious visitor approached the husband, who was chopping wood without a shirt, his toned physique glistening in the sun. "I hear you're 102, the visitor exclaimed. "That's correct," the old man replied with a smile. "And you're in incredible shape. What's your secret?" The old man chuckled. "Help me carry this wood to the house and I'll tell you." The visitor agreed, and as they walked, the old man explained, "I've been married for 75 years, and early on the wife and I made a little arrangement. Whenever we have an argument, the loser has to run 5 kilometers. Being a normal married couple, I've been running almost every day for 75 years. That's how I stay in shape." The visitor laughed, but then asked, "That explains you, but what about your wife? She looks just as fit as you do." The old man grinned. "Well, she usually runs after me to make sure I finish the whole 5. A widower, enjoying his retirement, bought a house near a high school. For the first few weeks, his retirement was peaceful until the new school year began. One afternoon, 3 young boys came down the street, merrily banging on every bin they passed. This continued for days and then a whole week until the man decided he'd had enough. The next afternoon, he stepped outside to meet the boys as they banged their way down the street. Stopping them, he said, "You kids sure know how to have fun. In fact, I used to do the same thing when I was your age. Would you do me a favor? I'll give each of you $1 if you promise to keep doing it." The boys, thrilled with the offer, happily agreed and continued their noisy routine. After a few days, the man came outside with a sad smile and said, "You know, this recession is really hitting me hard. From now on, I'll only be able to give you 50 cents each." The boys weren't thrilled, but they kept up their antics. A few more days passed, and the man came out again, shaking his head. "Look, this recession is getting worse. I'm afraid I can only afford 25 cents each now." The leader of the boys looked at him incredulously and said, "That's it? You really think we're going to waste our time banging on bins for 25 cents each? You must be crazy. We quit!" And with that, the man enjoyed peace and serenity for the rest of his days. An elderly man accidentally rear-ends a young driver in a flashy sports car. Enraged, the young man jumps out of his car and confronts the old man. "Look what you've done to my car!" he shouts. "You're going to give me $10,000 right now, or I'll beat you to a pulp." "Oh my," says the old man. "I don't have that kind of money. Let me call my son. He trains dolphins, and he'll know what to do." "Dolphins?" the young man sneers, rolling his eyes. The old man pulls out his phone, dials his son, and as soon as his son answers, the angry young driver snatches the phone from his hand. "So you're the dolphin trainer, huh? Well, your dad here just rear-ended my car, and I need 10 grand right now, or I'm going to beat both of you to a pulp. So you'd better train those dolphins to bring in the cash." "I'll be there in 10 minutes, the calm voice on the other end replies. Exactly 10 minutes later, a pickup truck pulls up, and a massive man gets out. He walks confidently toward the irate driver. Before the young man can react, the big guy slams his forehead into the bullies, knocking him out cold. He catches him as he falls, gently placing him in a heap on the side of the road. Afterward, the big man walks over to the old man, shakes his head, and says, "For the last time, Dad, I train SEALs, Navy SEALs, not dolphins." A 70-year-old man marries a 20-year-old woman. A year after their wedding, they arrive at the delivery room where a healthy baby boy weighing 3.5 kilograms is born. The nurse asks the elderly man, "Is he yours?" "Yes," the old man replies proudly. "Congratulations," says the nurse. The old man smiles and says, "Well, the old engine still runs." 2 years later, the couple returns to the delivery room. This time, a healthy baby girl, also weighing 3.5 kilograms, is born. Again, the nurse asks, "Is she yours?" "Yes," the old man answers. "Well done," says the nurse. "The engine still runs," the old man says with a grin. Another 2 years pass, and they arrive at the delivery room once more. Another healthy 3.5 kilograms baby boy is born. The nurse asks again, "Is he yours?" "Yes," the old man replies. "Congratulations," says the nurse, clearly impressed. The old man chuckles. "Well, the engine is still running." The nurse smiles, but then adds, "You might want to change the oil, though. The last one came out black." A lonely little old lady checked into a motel on her 70th birthday. Feeling a bit adventurous, she decided to call one of those men from the phone book who advertise sensual massages and companionship. She came across an ad for a guy named Tender Tony. He looked amazing in the photo, with muscles, a dazzling smile, and a body that seemed to promise the impossible. Thinking, why not? She dialed the number. "Good evening, ma'am. How may I help you?" A deep, sensual voice answered. Flustered but determined, she plunged ahead. "Hi, I hear you give great massages, but let's be clear. I'm alone in town, and what I really want is sex. I want it hot and wild. I want leather, whips, and rubber, and I'm ready to go all night. Tie me up, cover me in chocolate syrup, whipped cream. Whatever you've got, I'm in. How does that sound?" The voice on the other end replied smoothly, "That sounds absolutely fantastic, madam, but first you'll need to press 9 for an outside line." Dear granddaughter, the other day I went to our local Christian bookstore and saw a "Honk If You Love Jesus" bumper sticker. Feeling particularly sassy after an inspiring choir performance and a thunderous prayer meeting, I bought it and slapped it on my bumper. Boy, am I glad I did. It turned out to be such an uplifting experience. I was stopped at a red light at a busy intersection, lost in thought about the Lord and His goodness, when I didn't realize the light had changed. It was a good thing someone else loves Jesus, because if he hadn't honked, I might have missed it. Turns out a lot of people love Jesus. As I sat there, the car behind me started honking like crazy. Then the driver leaned out the window and shouted, "For the love of God, go, 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 Jesus Christ, go!" What an exuberant cheerleader for Jesus. Soon everyone around me was honking too. I smiled and waved at all those loving folks. I even joined in with a few honks of my own. I think there was someone from Florida behind me as I heard him yelling something about a sunny beach. I also saw another man waving with his middle finger stuck up in the air. I asked my teenage grandson in the back seat what that meant, and he said it was probably a Hawaiian good luck sign. Well, I've never met anyone from Hawaii, so I leaned out the window and returned the good luck sign. My grandson burst out laughing. Even he was enjoying this religious experience. A couple of folks got so caught up in the joy of the moment that they got out of their cars and walked towards me. I thought they might want to pray or ask about my church, but just then I noticed the light had changed. Grinning, I waved at all my brothers and sisters and drove through the intersection. I was the only car to make it through before the light changed again, and I felt a little sad to leave them all after the love we had shared. So I slowed down, leaned out the window, and gave them all the Hawaiian good luck sign one last time as I drove away. Praise the Lord for such wonderful folks. Love, Grandma. A lady was standing on a street corner waiting for her bus when she noticed a weight machine with a sign that read, "Only 10 cents for your weight and fortune." Intrigued, she fished a dime out of her purse and inserted it into the machine. Out popped a card. "You weigh 126 pounds, and in 30 seconds, you will pass gas." Skeptical, she waited. And sure enough, 30 seconds later, she let one rip. Embarrassed but impressed by the machine's accuracy, she decided to give it another shot. She inserted another dime, and the card read, "You still weigh 126 pounds, and in 30 seconds, a really hot guy will show interest in you." Curious, she waited. Sure enough, 30 seconds later, a tall, muscular, blonde-haired, blue-eyed man appeared from a nearby alley and gave her a flirtatious smile. Flattered and feeling like a movie star, she spent a few thrilling moments chatting with him. After he left, she returned to the machine, now brimming with confidence. She found another dime, strutted over, and popped it in. The card read, "You still weigh 126 pounds, and while you were farting and flirting, you missed your bus."